Take 622.
It's not.
Are you ready? We're ready to throw it back.
It's been 9 seasons of the Inside Track on Making House Home.
You've learned how to build wealth,
How to navigate the ebbs and flows of the real estate market
how to create a healthy home.
while becoming part of a community.
We've helped over 2,380 families through the seasons of their lives, ensuring their home was more than just shelter from the weather.
It was shelter to weather the storms of life.
It's exciting to continue on the journey with you.
Get ready to enjoy this episode
As it's one of our favorite episodes, hand-selected from the last 9 seasons to take you back before we take you forward into the new Life's Inside Track on February 5th.
Coming through. Get down with you. Hey, reporters sitting flashing lights. People wanna get down with you. What you wanna do? Well, man, it's on you. Take me down.
Okay, the compound effect. We were just talking about before we started recording, while between the little tiny video clip that we do, if you've never seen one of the video clips, you actually might going to want to watch them on Facebook because they're like,
Then they have to friend you to watch it.
or you, or Leah, or Candace, or Ryan. You could friend any of us. And we would accept because it's kind of neat to see the behind the scenes when we don't even really know what we're doing yet. And it applies specifically to the compound effect. Because what compound effect does it have being spontaneous on air, spontaneous on video? How does that play out over in our case, 7-year period, 359 Inside Track episodes, and thousands of online little video clips creates an effect that hopefully means we're getting better at this thing called connecting with you and engaging with you in conversation. So today, it's Yetta Decker.
Ken Decker and
Leah Dixon.
we're going to be talking about things in your life, the 8 things in your life actually, that can make a great effect on your life, either improving it or deteriorating it.
Yeah, and there's way more than 8. Recognize this is not an exhaustive list, and it's maybe even not the top things. It's the things that were top of mind.
It's Ken's top 8.
Okay, Ken's top 8. Let's agree. Ken's top 8.
So Leah, if you had to pick, what would be your number one thing that would have a compound effect in your life?
Well, my background is in nutrition. So I found that the compound effect was huge in dealing with clients because everybody knows the things that they're supposed to do.
They do?
Well, you know that you're
do.
supposed to eat more fruits and vegetables and stay away from, prepared or
Processed
foods
Yep.
and things like that.
Stay on the outside of the grocery store aisle.
Exactly.
Yep.
So we know that we're supposed to do certain things, but it gets overwhelming because everybody has these bad habits. They eat a lot of junk food. They eat things that they know they shouldn't. And as a nutritionist, if you just sit there and say, okay, this is what you're supposed to do, you need to cut out this, you need to cut out that.
No
you need
refined sugar.
Exactly.
How about we lose that? How about fried food?
Well, there are so many things that we eat that we know we shouldn't, right? And
Because they taste so good.
they really do.
Or at least that's what we've trained our taste buds.
Yes. we have.
Exactly. And so if you give somebody too many things to do, they get overwhelmed
And they
do none of them.
Right.
So what I would do with clients is start very slowly and say, we're going to choose 2 things for you to change in your diet and start with those. And they would look at me like, 2 things? Those are 2 very simple things. How is that going to change anything? But they will, because those 2 things that you change become habit and you start to feel a little bit better and then you change one more thing. And it's easier as you go along to change one more thing and change one more thing. And before you know it, you're eating a healthy diet, you're feeling better, you have more energy, you can start to exercise, and overall, it makes a huge difference. But it has to start with really small steps.
And even one small step.
Absolutely.
Right? And I have found in my own life, so I'll wrap myself out, that when I make one small change, especially if I make a really core one. So if I eat better food, for argument's sake, which is a core fundamental good thing to do, now I don't want to eat the junk food. Now I want to exercise. Now I want to drink more water. Now I want to go to bed earlier because I feel better. And so one feel better causes almost a trickle effect, or a ripple effect, or as we've been calling it, a compound effect in moving us forward.
Yeah, and I think that compound effect is so important to understand. Especially when we're younger, young like me.
Even that I can't even get out of my mouth without tripping over it.
Okay, I'll back up a little. Like 30 years ago.
Young like you?
When I was younger.
Okay, I'll go there.
You know, you could choose a hamburger and french fry at lunch. And because it was active, really didn't affect me. You know, I'd eat it for once, twice, 3 times, 4 times a week, and you don't see much change. But gradually what happens, especially I was reading the book by Darren Hardy on the compound effect, and you eat that, and then suddenly, after 10 years of eating that, oh my goodness, I'm 20 pounds overweight, or I'm 30 pounds overweight, and then you combine that with a soda pop of, a cola or whatever, 140 calories in a can, and those things start accumulating. Now, the same compound effect happens if I choose that I'm going to eat a salad and a soup for lunch, and I'm going to have water instead of pop. Those calories over the weeks and the years, they have the opposite effect. I stay younger, fitter.
Longer.
Right? Longer. And it's the compound effect of the small decisions. Like you said, make 2 changes.
2.
Make 2 changes in your diet.
Small changes.
And it will compound. And then you start feeling a little better. You go, oh, I could do something else. I could add one more change.
I think a lot of times we don't realize how poorly we feel. Like you're saying, well, if I eat the hamburger and the french fries and the Coke when I'm younger, I don't really feel it. Well, I think you do. You just don't realize that you do. It becomes normal for you. So how you're feeling is normal. You don't know any different until you start eating better and you go, wait a minute, I have more energy. I'm feeling better. Is this how I'm supposed to really feel? And that's when you notice it.
When you start waking up to your body's signals, like, I like fish and chips, Leah. And fish and chips doesn't like me is what I'm finding out. Yeah, it is a confession. But fish and chips doesn't like me because I've recognized now if I eat that at lunch, about half an hour later, I'm dragging myself around the office for the next 3 to 4 hours. I'm yawning. I'm thinking, oh, I just want to go home and sit down and want to work. And that's just recognizing my body talking to me about the fuel I put in it. Mm-hmm. If you have a gasoline car and you put diesel fuel in it, it's going to die. It's not going to work, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's the same thing with our bodies. When you fuel it with the right fuel, you start to feel better.
Absolutely.
And so I appreciate what, Leah, you're saying, because that's a conversation we've often had and maybe even sometimes got into heated fellowship around.
Yeah, is that the best choice for you, Ken?
Is that your voice for me?
Yes.
At least
right
today.
now it is.
Right now. And the compound effect of that choice that isn't the best choice. Also, though, what Leah's saying, which I love, is we delude ourselves to thinking we don't actually even know the difference, that we're not feeling its impact. And yet if we would tune into the awareness of what our body is actually telling us, we actually aren't feeling great even in our 30s when we eat things that hurt our bodies.
Exactly.
is really what you're saying.
Yes.
Because we know that I used to love red licorice.
Really? I thought it was black licorice.
No, well, salted black licorice is a totally different thing.
Yeah, that's just gross. I would never get addicted to that.
Oh, it's delicious.
Two salted black licorice people on one show? How's that even possible?
Because we grew up on that
Yeah.
stuff. And so a lot of the things that we love, which is interesting in this conversation about compound effect, and salted black licorice is a perfect example. It's what we're familiar with. It's what
Or it
we
was
were
a treat when you were a kid.
right.
And so why are treats bad for us? Like when you say, oh, I'm going to give you a treat to your child, it may be an ice cream or a candy or a chocolate bar, right? Why not a treat be an orange or some raspberries and strawberries with a dab of whipped cream or something?
Yeah, exactly.
And yet it's what we're used to.
Yeah.
So from the time I was little, black salted licorice was all the craze. And now when Ken got me some for Christmas, which, yeah, he shouldn't have.
Is there any left?
Yeah, there's a few. And they sat on the counter and I put cellophane over them because I thought if people come into my house, I need to say to them, do you like black salted licorice? Because if you don't, you can't have any because you're going to spit it out. And that's 25 cents that you're spitting down and it's one of my black salted licorice and I'm not putting up with that. I mean,
She'll share as long as you'll eat it.
right, I'll share.
But if you're going to spit it out, she's not going to share with you.
I used to share just to watch people's reaction.
It made me crazy. As a kid, I'd have my little package and I'd go to school and people would want them and then they would go on the ground and I would cry. Well, not literally cry, but be a little disappointed. So we get a lot of our habitual compound effect things from the time we're little. So that speaks to nutrition with our kids
Yes.
and our grandkids. What are we feeding them now that will actually, maybe they don't even see the evidence. They'll never know that it doesn't feel good because this is the way they'll always feel
Right.
in relation to eating those things. And that's a really valid point. We can't overstress or stress that enough because you don't even recognize it because it's so subtle. That negative compound effect is so subtle that it's not until 20 or 30 years later, 40 years later, that you might notice.
Well, and that was one of the things in the Darren Hardy book he talked about was a baseball player who chewed tobacco in his one cheek. It was always in his one cheek, and for years you didn't see anything, years you didn't see anything, years you didn't see anything. And then suddenly he developed mouth cancer, and they had to cut away a big chunk of his mouth, and it was because of chewing tobacco.
In one little spot.
And the same thing with, smoking. I think the packages say now you got a 1 in 2 chance of getting cancer if you smoke
Smoking-related
cigarettes.
cancers, yeah.
Right? But it's the compound effect. People don't feel it initially. They like the feeling they get. It's addictive, smoking. And so it's compounding, but they don't realize it because it's catching up with you.
And you just brought up a kind of neat point because it's a big deal. Some of the stuff we're talking about is really serious. It's not just little things. They actually have a huge, serious impact. And so maybe it's important, or likely it's important, if it's one of these bigger things that are tweaking something in you to get professional help. Because by no means are we pretending to be medical doctors, because we are not. We have just watched the compound effect in our own lives and in the lives of those we love catch up with them, both in a really good way and in a really negative way. So potentially consult a nutritionist, consult a doctor, consult anybody in a field that feels like, hey, this can help me increase the compound effect in a good way or help me decrease the effect that has already taken place or is taking place that was negative. So having an active lifestyle, probably don't need a doctor for that, except if you haven't been active for a really long time, you do need a doctor for that. You need to have somebody to journey with you because too much is too much. I know one of my dear friends that runs a business organization called Sustainable Wellness Now. If somebody's been inactive for a long time, she'll say, well, just get up and walk from the house to the kitchen 5 more times in one day. Just do something really little at first, like really little at first, because then it's going to get to be further and further and further.
And it's an easier step, too. I know when you started getting back into exercise, and you never really liked exercise.
I still don't.
Okay, there you go.
Let's
what
not
did you
fool
start
ourselves.
with? Was
Well,
it 7 minutes?
5.
5 minutes.
5 minutes, because for years I said I'm going to do my 30 minutes. I'm going to do my rigorous 30 minutes a day. And for years, it was enough to get me not to do anything. And then when I said, commit to 5 minutes, that's it. Within a few months, I was doing 30 minutes, and I was only committed to 5. And it made all the difference. Just recently, I was in Mexico with my dad, who is 78 years old now, and we decided to take a mother-daughter. It was supposed to be a mother-daughter trip, and my mom said, I don't feel up to going. It's going to be too much. And your dad wants to go with you. And at first I went, taking my dad again? And she said, yeah, I'd like you to take your dad. And I said, okay, great. So the two of us went. And what was amazing, at 78 years old, we started day 1 at about 10,000 steps. And that's about 8 kilometers. And by day 7, we were only there a week, we were at 17 and a half kilometers, 22,000 steps. And it was really neat.
Each day or cumulative?
That was that day. So we did about 100 kilometers.
All together in a week?
Yeah, in a week.
At an all-inclusive relaxed resort?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I got it. I got the picture now.
And it was fun because it was just a little bit more every day. So it was adding a couple thousand steps a day. And before we knew it, we're at 17 and a half kilometers. And it's the compound effect that had, and it let us enjoy the ice cream or the gelato a little bit more.
Yeah, does that have a compound effect when you eat gelato 2 to 4 times a day?
It's just a little
Miss
bit.
Nutritionist.
It was just a little bit. So that's the flip side. One allowed us to do the other, I'm going to say. Because we
not
both
see the effect
and
of it.
not see too much effect. Well, neither of us put on any visible poundage. And imagine if we hadn't done the walking. Right?
Yep. So financial. There's big compound effects in financial.
Absolutely. When I first started working, I was 18 years old when I got my first full-time job. And my dad told me, I'm going to make an appointment for a financial planner, for you to sit down with this financial planner. And I'm 18. What do I know about finances, right?
Not much, right?
I knew nothing. So this financial planner says, I would like you to set a little bit of money aside every month into this account. It was called the mustard seed account. I have no idea. I don't recall what it is. But he said, take $50 a month, which to me was a big deal at the time, but really it wasn't in the big picture.
Like $1.50 a day.
Yeah, and I'm still living at home with my mom, right? So like $50 a month is not a big deal. And so I started to do that, and I did that for as long as I was employed. It was taken directly out of my check, so I never saw it. I didn't have to make any transfers or anything. It was taken out. And I only stayed at that job for a couple of years. It wasn't a terribly long time. And then I forgot about the money. Not totally forgot, but I mean, I just left it alone. And probably about 10 years ago, I went to go check and see what was going on in that account, and I had $14,000 in there. And this was just from a few dollars from my paycheck.
For a short period of time.
For a short period of time, but it was many years ago. So over time, had I continued to contribute to that, I was kicking myself. If I had kept it up even after, I changed jobs, that I would have tons of money. So,
and that was such a small little thing.
Yes, exactly.
And look at the impact.
Well, Einstein says that compound effect is the strongest force in the world. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Either for good
Yeah.
or
For bad. Yeah, because if you've got consumer debt, then you've got the compound effect going the opposite direction. And for me, a morning ritual has an effect on my life, and that's probably one of the biggest things. If I can sit and for the first hour put things in my life that are useful and helpful, like a little bit of exercise or reading my scriptures. I read scriptures. But in the morning's one of the best times to read because the brain is fresh and open and receptive. And the compound effect of reading a book every day for 15, 20 minutes over a lifetime is unbelievable knowledge. The morning ritual, some people pray. We have a mirror exercise, which is kind of cute. It's
It's not really that cute. It's actually really uncomfortable.
It is cute because you wrote it on a little heart and hung it from my mirror, so it's kind of cute, Yetta. And it says, what do I celebrate about myself? What do I celebrate that I did yesterday or this morning? And what do I forgive myself for? And then what do I commit to doing today? And that little exercise of asking myself that question and answering it out loud
in the mirror
has a compound effect on what I accomplish each day and how fresh I come into the day.
And what we ended up doing, because some days it was a little draggy to do our own, because it's been a long time since we've done the exercise, we actually decided to do most of it for each other, which has been kind of interesting.
A little scary.
A little scary. And so we're willing to stretch ourselves. And if we had never started, we could never have gotten to the point to stretch ourselves.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. And that moves into mood. Mood has a way, our emotional state or stance has an amazing way of having a compound effect on our day, which is really what you're saying. And it can either spiral down or it can almost catch a butterfly wing, so to speak, of its own and become incredible, just based on where you head. Do we head up or do we head down?
So how do you do that?
Well, for me, does start with prayer, absolutely. It starts that as soon as I become aware also that my state isn't so good, that I take every thought captive right in that moment. And just the awareness goes, am I happy with the direction I'm headed in? If I'm not happy, then how do I change it? Sometimes it's physically jumping up and down and doing some jumping jacks or something like that. And we do some funny little exercises that we've shown on other shows. Just to shift the energy, because where energy goes, energy grows. So we get more of what we create. And if I choose to let it spiral down, well, it's bad where it might go. Yeah, really bad. And we don't want to talk about that right now.
Really, really bad.
Yeah, really bad.
Okay, and what other ritual, like sleeping is a ritual, right? It's a compound effect of sleeping.
Oh, huge. So going to bed at the right time or the same time, and the right time for me may not be the right time for you, and yet finding your circadian rhythm, what works for you from awake and a sleep and awake time, depending on what way you're doing your cycle. If you're keeping those constant, it changes energy and mood and everything about you, your vitality, your ability to exercise, your ability to think clearly, because thinking clearly is something I really honor. I like the idea of thinking clearly.
So if you don't sleep enough,
I can't think clear.
it's actually like being intoxicated.
It is. It's like
right? Being sleep deprived. Even sleep apnea, which I was listening to the other night, actually. Well, I couldn't sleep. And you still have a little bit of sleep apnea we're going to have to work on. And that quality of sleep over time, the compound effect of that, affects your ability to even operate motor vehicles, apparently.
It affects your memory as well.
Your memory, yeah.
Affects a lot of things, how you function. I remember being sleep deprived for many years when my children were young, and it's difficult to function. Simple everyday tasks are more difficult to do when you're sleep deprived.
So getting a good night's sleep, if you can, if there's some way to do it, especially, that's another conversation, with not a lot of drugs, because that changes things in your brain too. And again, If this is something you're dealing with, seek a medical professional. I'm not pretending to be one. I've just done a whole lot of reading because I have struggled with sleep. And so I've done a ton of reading and a ton of experimenting with things. And
which is more
Nutritionists
important?
can help too.
yeah, nutritionists can help as well, because what you're eating, oh my goodness, don't let me have ice cream in the evening, because I will be up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning for a couple of hours.
There
Well,
are
yeah.
good natural supplements that help as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the thing is, what we found is, depending if we eat some desserts later in the evening,
Sugar.
whether it be ice cream or candy or licorice or whatever it may be, that the body crashes and wants more sugar. And when you go to sleep, for Yetta, it's usually around 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, her body crashes. And so actually we're going to try this, because we hadn't tried it yet. Because she would get up and try to go back to sleep and do some reading and prayer and whatever, and finally fall asleep an hour or two later. And I was thinking, why not have a piece of fruit or a banana or something? If she's actually, it's the crash that woke her up, then that might allow her to go back to sleep very quickly. Just a thought.
Just a thought. Always learning, always growing, always trying new things, even on air, even things I didn't know was about to happen. It's all good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So how would we finish the day? We talked about morning rituals. You had some questions that you asked your children.
My favorite part of the day when my children were young was bedtime. Tucking them into bed is
That's
when...
because they were going to be gone for the night, right?
No. That's when we had the best conversations.
Okay.
So each child would have their one-on-one time with mom, and they'd get tucked in. And the question that I asked them, I started asking them when they were quite young. And I'd say, what was your favorite part of the day? Well, when I first started asking, they would struggle with that, and they'd think back over their day and they would try to come up with something that was positive that they could tell me. But I found over time, they would start to look for things throughout the day. So during the day, they would have a more positive attitude, and they would take notice to the positive things that happened to them, and they were excited to tell me. So when I asked the question at the end of the day, what was your favorite part of the day? It would start off with 1 or 2 things, and eventually I would get a list. Well, I did this, and this happened, and this happened to this person. And then I would add another question. Did you make someone smile today? And so then they were on a mission, right? Not only were they looking for the positive in the day, they were looking to find different ways to make people smile so they could tell me about that at the end of the day. And I found those 2 simple questions made a huge difference in their day. It made it more positive. They had a more positive outlook. They were looking for these positive things, and then they were creating them.
Right. And then also it created a better day for you.
Absolutely.
Like not only for the kids, so again, it had a compound effect.
Yes.
Right? So a compound effect isn't just for us. Like that's what I love about this topic. Compound translates from you to other people and from other people to you. So choosing the people you hang out with is part of a compound effect too. So that's a show for another day.
It's kind of like the random acts of kindness, the smiling at people. When you smile first at people, you tend to get a smile back. If you frown at someone, guess what?
You get a frown back.
You get a frown back. It's funny how that works. And the compound effect of going through life smiling at people and people being receptive and smiling back to you and being pleasant is amazing. It's like I've always heard that you teach people how to treat you. Mm-hmm. And I thought, that's kind of weird. But it's really not, because when you treat them a certain way, they'll treat you back.
So
typically.
So we're smiling, and we're excited that we get to thrive together at home and in life, and simply move forward together.
What you wanna do? Well, man, it's on you. Take it down.
Make sure to mark your calendars to join us on February 5th as we continue to move forward on the new
Life's Inside Track.